Mayor Pro Tem Martha Castex Tatum, the chair of our Economic Development Committee, joined by Council Member Thomas, who is the chair of our Housing and Affordability Committee. And we will now call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome the council members and staff that are in attendance today. Council Member Carter is here. Council Member Alcorn is here. Vice Mayor Pro Tem Peck is here. We also have staff from Council Member Castillo's office, staff from Council Member Salinas' office, staff from Councilmember Ramirez's office, staff from Councilmember Huffman's office, staff from Councilmember Jackson's office, and also staff from Councilmember Kamin's office, and of course, the incredible staff that has been helping us produce our community meetings and all of the work, the staff from Councilmember Thomas's office and the staff from my office, DD and Justice. Thank y'all also for being here. So this meeting is open to the public. It's being held in person and virtually. We are also broadcasting via HTV. Council members and staff, y'all know the drill. We'll do the presentations and then you can ask questions. If you are online, you can put your questions in the chat pod. There are 6 members of the public that have signed up to speak today. If you are here and you did not sign up prior to today, there is a sheet on the desk here to my left, and you can sign up to speak today. If there are any other, staff from Councilmember Davis's office has also joined us. If there is anything in particular that you'd like to share with us, our council offices are still accepting feedback, but we will move forward expeditiously. Councilmember Thomas, do you want to jump in and make any opening remarks? And then we'll just jump into you leading us off on our agenda for today. Let's get this party started. So on today's agenda for the Joint Committee, and I want to just thank all of the city departments that are here, but who actively participated in the 2 citywide public meetings. Your contribution, expertise was paramount, and thank you for meeting the constituents where they're at in regards to their issues. I really appreciate that. And just to recap some of the meetings, we'll go through the feedback later in the presentation, but we had hundreds who participated online, who watched. So I want to just appreciate the fact that technology has really helped advance today's agenda. So today's Joint Committee will hear from several departments regarding the apartment inspection ordinance. I want to start by calling up first, the City Legal Department will provide an overview of the latest version of the Chapter 10 Apartment Inspection Ordinance. Attorney Michelle, are you ready? I want to give you some time. Okay. And then following our city attorney, we'll hear from Houston Public Works. Thank you.
This will not take much time because really the heart of this is really the inspection, the human aspect of it and all of that. I'm just giving you sort of a framework of the ordinance. And so this ordinance has been in the works for a bit. What people are really trying to focus on is how do we have something that's fair, provides notice, and is workable for people. So we came up with a scheme where if you have 10 violations in a 6-month period, you're required to register. There's a period of time to register that can be appealed. Once after that happens, they're subject to an inspection. There's notice for that. These are life safety issues, stairwells, lighting, things of that nature. Then they're given a certain period to rectify it. If they do that and everything's in compliance for a period of time, then they no longer have to register. But if they don't rectify it, and they can also be repeat offenders, they can be fined on a daily basis up to $2,000. And this also includes things such as a lack of certificate of occupancy that's going to be required. There's a committee of the various departments that are involved that meet for this purpose to determine how compliance is going, to make sure the inspections are occurring, and following through on things of that nature. At the end of the day, what we hope to do is to monitor this, see how the number 10 works, see how well is the committee working, get the feedback from not only the tenants, but also the apartment owners. And this is going to be an organic document that we'll look at to see what can be done. But that is really the essential framework. And I think really the heart of it is hearing from the departments that will be doing the inspection, the permitting, and they can put more meat on this.
Thank you. Colleagues, do you have any legal questions that you want to address our city attorney on? If not, we'll move to our next.
Hold on one second. Attorney Michelle, has the legal department been able to review any of the feedback from our operators and leaseholders who participated and submitted recommendations? Have you been able to review that and have responses prepared?
Yes, we've been able to review it. And I think, for the most part, really, it's the opportunity is we clearly have the legal ability to do that. What they're really looking for is, are there adequate channels for people to contest any findings or any determinations? And we believe we have that.
Okay, thank you. No other questions in the queue. Public Works? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You want to stand?
wanna stand?
We can raise it up
Yes,
if you want to stand.
And can you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Chris Shanahan, Assistant Director with Houston Public Works, serving as a building official for the City of Houston.
Hold on one second. Let's catch our tech up to the presentation so we can follow.
All right. So I'm going to be providing you, the panel, with an overview of the apartment inspection ordinance, moving into the multifamily habitability program, which was passed into ordinance in 2009 under ordinance 2009-1043. Next slide. So the multifamily habitability program is a City of Houston program that monitors multifamily rental properties with 3 or more units to ensure that they meet the minimum safety and habitability standards. Next slide. So properties subject to the habitability inspections. So this applies to apartment complexes with 3 or more units. Properties must register with the City of Houston. The city conducts 2 types of inspections to evaluate compliance with habitability standards. The first type is known as your programmatic inspections, which are conducted on a 4-year cycle. And the second being service request inspections, or those kind of complaints that are received via 311. Next slide. What inspectors evaluate? So our inspectors primarily evaluate exterior building conditions and common areas of multifamily properties. Some examples could be building exterior condition, stairways, balconies, and railings, exterior lighting, walkways and accessibility paths, structural concerns visible from the exterior, and general maintenance of the property. Next slide. So this is just a general overview of the workflow of that inspection process. So the property owners receive an inspection invoice and a notice of the inspection to be scheduled. Once they submit that payment for the inspection and the registration paperwork, the property is then registered with the city. An inspection is scheduled. Our inspectors evaluate the property. Violations are documented if any are identified. And then the owner is notified and given time to correct the violations. Next slide. And if violations are found, the notice of violation may be issued by the inspector or inspectors. The property owners must correct the violations, and re-inspections will be conducted. Additional enforcement actions may follow if violations remain unresolved. An example of that would be the issuance of citations for non-compliance. Next slide. So the habitability inspections team is currently staffed with 3 senior inspectors, 12 field inspectors, 1 assistant chief inspector, and 1 division manager. And throughout, on an annual basis, the programmatic inspections, which are our recurring inspections of these apartment complexes, this team is roughly completing approximately 1,200 inspections per year. In addition to that, your 311 requests that are received average between 3,300 and 3,600 cases a year. Next slide. So moving in, just a brief overview of the high-risk apartment inspection program. Next slide. So what is it? So this proposed amendment is the City of Houston program that will identify, monitor, and address multifamily residential properties that meet the conditions to prioritize inspection and enforcement while supporting compliance. Next slide. So it's remedies and enforcement. So city inspectors authorized to enforce building, housing, health, or safety codes are empowered to issue citations or notices of violation for any infractions of this article. An owner and or operator who violates or whose multifamily rental building is in violation of any provision of this article and remains in violation beyond the period for correction consistent with the repair timeframes under state law where applicable or is otherwise set by the city shall be guilty of a misdemeanor punishable upon conviction by a fine of not less than $250 nor more than $2,000. Each violation and each day that a violation continues shall constitute and be punishable as a separate offense. Next slide. So in order for this program to be successful, Houston Public Works will be in collaboration with multiple city departments, which are here in the room with us today. Some of those folks will be with Housing Community Development, Houston Fire Department, Houston Health Department, Houston Legal Department, Houston Police Department, and Solid Waste Management. Next slide. And this is our contact slide for our multifamily habitability inspection team. Thank you.
I do have a couple of comments that I want to make. I think the thing that stood out the most to me in our conversations was how much the departments talk about the need for compliance and how we want to make sure that we are pushing property owners to comply. But I really am interested in the current 4-year cycle. What's the number of apartment complexes that we currently are looking at? And through that 4-year cycle, how have you determined the kind of worst of the apartments list? What do we have in our data now that can give us the starting point for folks that we need to keep on the horizon as we start creating this site?
So you're referring to the offenders that would be at the top of the list for this program, right? So Houston Public Works, our building code enforcement in conjunction with Houston Health Department and other city departments looked at 311 and complaint data of known properties to be repeat offenders or resistant to correcting violations. You have some of these complexes which are in just a state of very poor repair. And we have numerous occasions sent multiple inspectors from Public Works, Health Department, HPD. We've issued notices of violation, red tags, to no avail. And so the team has pulled data from 311 and then, and I guess, internal tracking to support which are our hot topic or our hot offenders, if you will. And I believe they've proposed that or composed a list of the top 10 or 15 properties.
Right. So what I'm looking for is, as we are in our regular state of doing business and going through our 4-year cycle, do you have the correlation of these are ones that we know will definitely be on the list, and does that coincide with our 311 data? Because we heard from a lot of tenants, and many of the tenants I know, that didn't know to call 311 or how to address the issue. So a big part of what we're doing is education.
Yes.
And making sure people know what what they should do if they are in a property that they are concerned about as far as habitability.
Mhm.
So what I'd like to know is, in your traditional 4-year cycle, do we have some correlation to our 311 data?
Yes.
And you may be able to get that to us later if you
Yeah,
don't.
I
if
don't
you
have the data available today. However, the time and time again, we see on these programmatic inspections where we have a very lengthy inspection report. And over that 4-year cycle, we may not even get compliance from that apartment complex. They may never call us back or achieve correcting all those violations that were identified. So then we show up in 4 years and they still continue to have all the violations present and then some. So those complexes, that's where we have these folks that are calling 311.
Right.
That are
And I
reporting
guess
problems.
my concern is because we are such a big city and we have so many apartment complexes that we aren't getting to those for 4 years. So the people that are living there for that additional 4 years, they're still dealing with the issue that had not been addressed. So we want to try to shorten that time frame.
Yes.
And that brings me to my second question, is the number of inspectors.
Yes.
What is an ideal number of inspectors, and this may be for you or Public Works, that we need to shorten that 4-year cycle window?
Well, so with full staff, 12 field inspectors, that would be a team of 2. So that would be 6 teams of inspectors that are out doing inspections for these programmatic inspections. And so if we're averaging 1,200 inspections per year with that volume of staff, for the 4,800 known apartment complexes that we have, we would almost need to quadruple that number.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Alcorn.
Thank you, Chair. On the re-inspections, how do you determine, it's probably based on the type of violation. How do you determine when you're going back to re-inspect and when the citations could start coming?
So after our initial inspection and we produce and issue the inspection report, the team we automatically schedule ourselves out for 60 days to go re-inspect that property.
So 60 days is the standard.
Mhm.
Okay. And then is it in the new proposed ordinance, does that remain 60 days?
It's actually trimmed down within, I believe, 30 days.
Okay, I do know in one of the sessions I went to that there was some concern over like larger type repairs taking longer. And is
Certainly.
that kind of taken into consideration?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely. So, I mean, in some cases, there could be construction documents or plans that are required to be submitted. That could be, they're having to use an engineering firm to
right.
work with them. Documentation and proof that they're working towards that would satisfy
Okay,
that they're making a good faith effort to resolve
Okay.
the problem.
so right now it's 60 days and we're moving to 30 days. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just to clarify, to make sure I fully understand Mayor Pro Tem's question about the 311 calls and your list of the apartment complexes that are really focusing on. So it's not just from the 311 calls alone. It may start with the 311 calls, but then when your inspectors actually go out there and you realize that this is serious, that's kind of when it makes the list. Is that correct?
Yes, it would be identified known violations, whether it's from a 311 complaint. One of the issues with 311 is the fact that you can have multiple callers from one address, right?
Right.
So are they calling about the same issue or are we calling about multiple issues? Now, when our inspectors are on site, they're able to look at the entire property. And if we can document that there are substantial, numerous violations, that just exponentially grows and would put somebody to climb higher on that list, the more and more violations that we continue to see.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a few clarifying questions, and then I'm going to move to staff from District G, Councilmember Huffman. So if we look at the 311 from Public Works, and then if we look at the calls for service from HPD around similar issues, right? There needs to be a deconfliction of those properties, because oftentimes, and I have quite a few on the west side, there's issues on habitability, there's structural issues, there's some safety issues, and these are repeat offenders. And where there's smoke, there's typically fire, right? We know that these things aren't necessarily isolated.
Right.
So I would be interested, and I think what may show a healthier view, which aligns our staff's energy is that when we know HPD has their top 25 or top 20, Public Works has their top 25, so does the health department, right? Repeat mold cases, repeat leaks, and I think we can have a better sense of how we deploy our effort. One of the things that was really important in what I expend overtime with my HPD stations is to deploy certs. And HPD goes out and it's like a community environmental response, and they'll audit these problem properties, present those recommendations, everything from street lights, broken windows, gates that don't work, right? All structural issues. And then they work with property management to get that across the line. I do think that there should, because you are lean and your inspectors are carrying a very aggressive portfolio, I do think there's synergy around leveraging HPD CERT around what your team is doing, because it's a more holistic response. It's not just a structural, but we're also addressing some other things.
Right.
And I think that can color in the lines about to get a better view of what we're doing. I think that is it in terms of this. I really do appreciate this because I think it reflects back on the type of portfolio inspectors have to carry, because we have so many multifamily properties throughout the city, and the type of demand, and once every 4 years may not do. Staff from Councilmember Huffman's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just have two quick questions. One, who's going to be chairing up this committee, and who should the council staff reach out to with an issue that we might have with a multifamily? Like, is there going to be one specific person, or?
So we have, and I don't have a copy of the proposed ordinance in front of me, but Public Works will have
Public Works?
two vice chairs from Public Works.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then my second question is when we put together the list of the people that are going to be on this committee, I see one is a representative who is a property owner in the city, but I don't see HAA. Is there a reason for that?
I can't intelligently answer that question. I would have to defer to the legal department or.
Part of the reason why we wanted to make sure that there was property owner representation there, but we wanted to try and minimize the association and advocacy group side. We wanted to have individuals who are able to represent, the perspective of, again, for this, a property owner, but we didn't want to have an entire advocacy group.
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
how did they feel about that? Were they fine with that? Or
I think they're here. You can ask them.
okay.
We received that was a curt answer. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. We have had a ton of conversations. Joshua Sanders and I had one-on-one calls with the Apartment Association, the Contractors Association, as well as the Texas Housers, to get feedback, to hear perspective. This was not a point of feedback that I have heard from anybody. But I do think you should ask any advocacy group about that. What I'll tell you is that we are trying to keep this, with the exception of representation of a tenant residing in the city and representation of a property owner. We are trying to keep this group to the people who are doing the work. And the idea behind it, and this is exactly to your point, I'd kind of like this to be practitioner-led, not to have a chair where we do sort of a formal committee structure. This needs to be people solving problems.
Questions? Thank you so much. Let me get back on script. Who do we have now? Health Department. Health Department. And for the record, can you share your name, please? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Roger Seeley. I'm Assistant Director at the Houston Health Department. All right, next slide, please. So as I mentioned, my name is Roger Seeley. I'll be talking a little bit about our apartment compliance program. For the sake of brevity, I will give an overview of what we're already doing as these regulations don't necessarily affect how and what we are doing. So I thought it'd be helpful to go over what we're doing and how we do it. The next slide, please. So this will be a very brief briefing over our inspection process, the legal authority, the operational and financial considerations of this program. Next slide. So the goal of the Houston Health Department Apartment Compliance Program is to ensure that all Houstonians have access to safe and healthy housing. They do this by responding to resident complaints. A team of environmental investigators identifies ordinance violations and works with tenants, management, ownership, and our partner departments for positive resolutions. Next slide. Some of the common complaints that we address are water intrusion, pest infestations, a lack of hot water, a lack of adequate HVAC, sewage overflows within the units, and lots of garbage overflows in the dumpsters outside the units. Next slide. These are just some examples, rather extreme examples that we've cited over the course of the program. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And next slide. Okay. So once a complaint has been routed to our department through Chris, we typically expect our investigators to respond within 3 business days. If a violation is identified, we generally give the management 7 to 10 days to correct that violation. In some cases, where there's extreme violation or extreme need for the tenant, that could be shortened. If the violation is not remediated within the designated time frame, a citation is normally issued and they'll be required to go to court. Next slide. So this is a dashboard internally we use to monitor the work. Over the last 3 years, our team has responded and resolved over 12,000 cases. That is a team of 5 investigators, 1 community involvement coordinator, 2 field supervisors, and a manager. And if you factor in the budget, that is $200 per resolved case for the city. $200 per resolved case. Next slide. This is a heat map of the resolved cases by zip code over that same time period, just to kind of show where, as you see, the team covers the entire city, and there are some hot spots where they spend more time at. Next slide. So just in summary, our team is dedicated to working with all parties, the owners, the managers, the tenants, and our sister departments, and you, the members of the council, to create safe and healthy living conditions and to make a positive impact on the quality of life in the community. That's all I have, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. And I want to reiterate again how much we talked about compliance and bringing these properties into compliance. But how do we determine if someone is calling for specific issues? How do we determine the time frame for compliance?
Sure.
Depending on the specific issue, who
Absolutely.
determines that time frame?
There is some, I guess, judgment involved in that, but it depends on one, how many units are involved sometimes. If an entire building is out of hot water, that would probably be something we would ask them to do within 24 to 48 hours. Or sometimes if a boiler's out and the part is on back order, we might work with them as long as we see they're making progress to extend that time. But generally, we ask our investigators and our managers to use discretion and determine the severity and the impact on people's lives.
And then another big topic that we talked about when we were in the community meetings with the property managers was the issue of the citations going to the property managers as opposed to the property owners. So I want to make sure that we have come to a resolution with, making sure that we have contact with the actual landlord, the actual person who owns the property, and that our citations are going to the owners and not being put in the property manager's name. And then this is also education for property managers. If I were a property manager, I would be giving up the name of the owner and saying, don't write the citation to me. It's my owner, Mr. Johnson, who owns this property that did not send me the money to get this trash picked up. So I want to make sure that we are having that conversation with our inspectors so that we are giving the correct person the citation, because we had a person who was saying that her name is tied up into some citations as a property manager. So I want to make sure we avoid that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been having those conversations with legal about how to best write the citations. Our instructions to our investigators are to always, whenever possible, cite the owner directly. In some cases, the owner will be issued the citation, but it will be handed to the manager, even though it's in the citation's name. Other cases, we might send it registered mail. The last resort is to actually write it to the manager, and that's only if there's no one else available.
So when these properties are registering, I know sometimes they're in an LLC or in some other type of name that does not give us the actual owner's name. Is there something legally when they register that we actually have a contact of a person?
I'm not aware of that, but that would be.
Mayor Pro Tem, that's a wonderful question. I'll try and get ahead of the bell ring. So if you look at section 10-154 of the MFRB registration.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Let me get my bearings.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Section 10 what?
10-154. A7, the building officials shall promulgate a form of the registration of MFRBs. Section 7 says the name, mailing address, physical address, telephone number, and email address of at least one owner of the MFRB. So the expectation here is that we are going to have someone's name on this list. And then the conversations that we're having, and this is going to be more of an operational thing, is as we transfer someone who is part of our MFRB into that sort of hot list of people that we're wondering, we're going to transfer that information. But more importantly, and this is still part of the discussion, is do we ask them to refill that form out? Do we ask them to give us a more current thing? Because as you know, right, our cycle is 4 years. So do we lose, does an owner drop off if it's multiple people who own this thing? So we're working through, and that's going to be part of the committee itself, of the people who are doing the work. What is the best operating position for us to have the current information that we have? But, and I'm going to say this, and this is something that is equally important. We want to absolutely have the side, an owner's name for the purposes of citation, but for the purposes of daily check-ins, it's really important to know who those managers are.
Yeah.
So we want to have both.
Right.
Thank you. 3 things that came up during the town hall on the tenant side, and I want to thank the health department for your presence and your contribution to that conversation. Number 1, mold inspectors. As a climate city, disasters, Hurricane Beryl, we were out of power 11 days, apartment complexes had leaks. If it's already humid or if it's already a mold prone unit, right, it's just, it happens. We don't have mold inspectors, and we have to account for that type of demand on 311 to address. The second thing was pre-inspection. The possibility of looking at our high risk, and if we have, X number of units that needed to be cleared, having a pre-inspection to make sure that if there's a new lease put on those units, the property manager, everyone's clear, and also the leaseholder, and we're clear as well. And I think it saves a lot of time and effort on the back end if we had a pre-inspection. And then lastly, communication to tenants. What was really interesting is many of them said that they had better response from 311 than with property managers, and they would often call 311 first and receive that response, and it would trigger response from the property manager, their front desk. And so how can we ensure once recommendations are shared, that the tenant, the leaseholder, is aware of the timeline, the fees, and what's available to them? Mayor Pro Tem mentioned it's about education, and we have been, encouraging leaseholders to read their contract, know what's available to them in their own private agreement, which is really important. But then how, from our perspective, are we then communicating what we're obligated to in that timeline?
Sure. So first, the mold issue. So mold is in itself very hard to address, in that there are no regulations about levels, types of mold that are toxic. What we do is address the underlying causes. If there's mold in a unit, if it's mold present, there's a reason for that. It's probably a water leak, leaky window sills, could be the HVAC, whatever it is, whatever's causing that moisture to intrude, we will do a violation for that, expect it to be fixed. In general, we usually pressure the owners to do some cleanup. Mold is fairly easy to clean up. In general, I think usually a detergent, soap, and water, maybe some repainting after you clean it up is generally good for non-extensive abatement. So in effect, we don't investigate mold in itself, but we investigate the cause of mold and expect it to be fixed.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Comments from District C?
Thank you. My questions were answered in the back and forth, so I just want to thank you so much for your continued partnership, especially at Life at Jackson Square in Meyerland. His team just helped us again where they had, once again, 200 units without hot water. They've had issues with no water. They've had several fires, and your team has been incredible coordinating with multiple city departments, so thank you. And we're glad that we've been able to support with overtime funds the apartment compliance program.
Absolutely. We appreciate your support. And I do want to acknowledge that we never go in this alone. We work very closely with all of the other departments to show these residents that the city does care, and we got there and work together. And you did mention some of the tenants' rights things. Sure. So I did bring a document that we pass out to make sure that tenants are aware of this. I can pass them around.
And I just want to say, when I lived in an apartment and I had mold in my bathroom, they just painted over it.
So, yeah.
And it came back later. The paint was new.
And I know Councilor Salinas' office had referred over some of the regulations that New York has in place. And they do have something on ordinance to deal with mold. In my opinion, it's kind of a roundabout way to get it cited, in that they choose to cite it as, so they establish any allergens as a dangerous health condition. So that's how they choose to deal with mold, pest infestation, et cetera. And then there is mold's hard to test for. It's very expensive to test for. So to get around that, it's a visual inspection. If there's 10 square feet or more of mold present in a unit, that's deemed a hazardous condition and has to be remediated within X amount of days. So there is precedence out there, but it still doesn't directly deal with mold as I think a lot of people would expect it to be dealt with.
No, I appreciate this. And then in closing, and then you can, we have no other questions in the queue. I do think it's advantageous for us, just knowing the conditions of our city and our climate, to look at some type of guidance of prioritizing like what we know to be true, right? The types, just so we can prioritize those incidents of mold. And that may come once we get, the departments gets their hands on it and starts working through that, to come back to the body with recommendations on what that looks like. Because it is very expensive to test for, but we know in our city, there's such a demand because it's 110 degrees, it's a rainstorm, the power is out, things happen, and we don't want health conditions, to expand around that. Thank you so much. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have anything else? Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll hear from the administration, Stephen David, representative from the mayor's office. Let's start that clock. Y'all hold up that sign in the back and say, you got 2 minutes.
For the purposes of brevity, the document that you've got before you, which is pulled up here, is the apartments ordinance feedback. We went ahead and took all of the bulleted items of recommendations that came from the two hosted meetings, and we numbered them, so AOF 1 through 24. Sure. And what I'd like to do, if you see the word resolved next to it, what we believe has occurred is that the draft that you received, and for the purposes of this conversation, as well as the nomenclature in the document, we call it version 2. Version 1 was what was submitted by Prop A. Version 2 is what has been refined since. And that is the document that Dee Dee sent out to you earlier today, and you also received it this past December. If we list it as resolved, we believe that it's taken care of within the confines of the ordinance already. So for the purposes of brevity, I will skip over those. If you disagree, please bring them up. I'm happy to talk about them. So with AOF 1, develop a pathway to assist tenants in breaking leases due to unsafe conditions. Any issue provided or any commentary provided by the city must be general in nature and should not amount to legal advice. It doesn't mean that we can't point them in the right direction. And so what we codify within, I believe, 1-77, 10-177 is the tenant rights section and tenant advocacy section. And what we stipulate is that the building official shall, in conjunction with police, public works, fire, Houston Health, and Houston Housing and Community Development, make information available on the city's website. So what we're planning on doing is establishing a hub of information that we can point people to, as well as developing enhanced collateral, exactly what Roger just passed out to y'all, but making sure that it's not just the perspective of the health department, but all other departments that have a part of this. So we believe that we satisfy that with the plan for that. That is something that's codified in ordinance, or is going to be an ordinance, but more importantly, it's going to be developed operationally as this committee convenes and begins to do their work. AOF.2 is designated contact within the health department to connect tenants to resources. The health department currently has one FTE, a community involvement coordinator, assigned to this role. We're going to monitor this during the pilot. It could very well be that we scale up on that type of employee based on the work and the need. The thing that I want to talk a little bit about, that's the comments that have been made around 311 cases. 311 cases are really important for us. It's a data-driven perspective to have. But the thing that I noticed during Hurricane Beryl and Derecho, we had an apartment complex off of 45 go 4 or 5 days without power. There were a whole bunch of medically fragile individuals who lived there. Apartment management just up and left, and we came across people getting really, really close to being medically critical. And when we went to 311, there weren't any more than normal calls that went there. But when we went to Google reviews, you can go and see 10 years of updated information from tenants, from residents of tenants saying rats and mice and mold and electrical wiring exposed and all the things that would activate any department if they received a service request like this. And to y'all's point exactly, one of the points that you made is that 311 obviously isn't known well enough, or people don't feel comfortable calling 311. And so that's one of the charges that we're going to have with this committee is how do we work through that? How do we make people more aware of 311? But also, how do we diversify the information stream? It's difficult to regulate and be punitive on things that are not data-driven data sets, and have data-driven decision-making, but it doesn't mean that we can't be informed by Google reviews. So how do we do that in a way that's healthy and helps drive the ultimate goal of this forward? That's resolved. So I'm going to jump to AOF.6 moving costs. So this ordinance doesn't expressly contemplate the expenditure of city funds to cover moving costs. I know that the housing department, there's a lot of federal regulation around relocation costs that occur. So for the purposes of this, we want to ask that we monitor this during the pilot. It could very well be that there doesn't need to be moving costs allocated. The city of Houston, as you know, is in a very tough financial situation, but it doesn't mean that we can't pull from other funding streams out there as we see the need arise. But the idea here was to get, I'm going to use tech language because that's what I come from, but we call it a minimally viable product, right? An MVP of just getting this off the ground, starting it, and let's learn from it and grow onto it. And so the thought here was we heard from the community that this is important to them. We recognize that there are certain situations in which relocation costs are required for folks like this. For example, if you have a housing voucher and the apartment is unavailable to you, they have to find you a new place or the voucher has to become portable to you. So there are certain scenarios, but we want to continue to monitor it and see where the need is and whether or not we can move the needle on that.
Before you move forward, just at the very least, in terms of consideration for our high risk, because I think it's important just to reiterate, this is not a fix-all. We will still have apartment complexes where the gates are broken, there's some issues, the roof will leak, there will be mold. This is not a Band-Aid. We're talking about our high risk in the city, which will continue to inform how we do everything else. But we're talking about the worst of the worst. During that time, if there's some type of way where rents are not increased during that time, where people are penalized while living in poor conditions, right? Where the structure's literally falling apart, the patios collapsing, the elevators not working. I follow a Instagram influencer, and he's always at apartment complexes highlighting the deteriorated conditions, trash, mice, like literally putting on Front Street. And I'm always in the comments because I don't want them to be in District F. I'm like, well, where they going? But I do think for those who may not be able to afford to move, are not on a voucher where they have that federal guidance, where we're not in a financial position, at least during the time of their lease, for there not to be an increase in their rent, so they can at least maintain whatever housing while we cure whatever those issues are with the owner. I think there has to be some consideration about that for our very worst.
Okay, thank you. AOF.9, identify which properties accept housing vouchers. Fully agree with this. This is something that we're coordinating with the Housing Authority on. I know that at one point, this is a couple of administrations ago, there was an attempt by the Housing Authority to develop a platform in which it was exclusively available apartments for vouchers, for voucher holders, as well as where they had their own voucher with the unit. So we're going to continue to work with them. They continue to be partners at the table on this. AOF.10 is
Can I
forced.
pause you right here? So in terms of your broad guidance, I think it's important to put the guidance of the Housing Authority, because they have federal rules that they have to abide by. And most people don't know the difference, right? Because you shouldn't know if I'm on a voucher or not, right? So I think it's important so we can continue to educate Houstonians on what's available to them if they are receiving subsidy, that they have an opportunity to move to another unit. And so that's publicly communicated, so they are in the right channels and they're not stuck in between departments and us navigating that for them.
Okay.
Thank you.
You thinking like on the website?
No, just in that same deal. Like if you, if it's Housing Authority and you have a voucher, here's your process. This is how you do that. So they're not stuck in 311 and then now we're diverting them somewhere else, when if they were informed, they know to just go straight. People come to public session all the time and talking about the issue, and it's like, oh, it's the authority.
Yeah.
We could just have started there. So just including that, because 9% properties, when we do that, it's different than a property that's on the market rate property. The housing department's able to inspect when we have dollars in it from the city, when there's a resolution involved. Otherwise, it's back to our default system. So I think the more we communicate all of our partners involved in housing, it's just people are more informed and we can be more efficient.
Yes, ma'am.
I promise to stop and let you finish talking.
I'm happy to be interrupted. AOF.10, forced property sales. So Chapter 214 of the Local Government Code grants us broad powers to be able to regulate and require a building to be vacated, repaired, secured, removed. It does not give us the authority to compel a sale. However, it's one of the reasons why we are forming this committee. It's one of the reasons why we are creating a naughty list, because we want to be able to move people and give them an extra special bear hug. I think Roger was the one who talked about, it was probably Chris as well. Our ordinances, at least in this avenue, are not meant to be punitive for the sake of being punitive. We want compliance. And so the idea behind this is we cannot force you to sell your complex, but we can make you aware that we care very much, and we're going to upwards of the civil fine resets every 24 hours, so we can continue to fine you, but the goal here is compliance. With AOF.11, transfer to vetted management companies. This is sort of a similar response to the one previous, but the ordinance doesn't compel property owners to transfer properties to vetted or approved management companies. The question that I have is, who do we consider approved? Does the city step into the screening process? But I do think that the ability of being able to say you're on the naughty list, we got to have a conversation with you, property owner, for the purposes of citation, as well as you, property manager or management company, for the purposes of doing everything in the way that you should be doing it. And again, AOF 10 and 11 are likely unlawful. So AOF.12, assistance with tenant relocation or move out fees. This is a similar conversation as before with regard to moving costs. It contains a tenant advocacy component. However, this is one of those things where, and a good example is to look back to the Fifth Ward Cancer Cluster and the difficulty. It has to become general fund money to be able to pay for people to relocate. And a general rule of thumb for cost is that on the federal side, it varies by the size of your family, but a relocation cost per unit is going to be anywhere between $30,000 to $50,000 per unit. So it stacks very expensively, very quickly. And the city of Houston taking on a financial burden like that could be quite a problem. On AOF-13, pre-inspections of properties across the departments, the thing that I wanted to make sure, and this is a shout out to Roger and to Chris, both of them said we would need more staff to be able to do that, which I think is a fair comment. The question that I would ask from the perspective of the administration is how many. We are going to be doing a pilot. This pilot is going to contain 12 apartment complexes, 6 of which have certificates of occupancy and 6 of which do not have certificates of occupancy. And the idea is we want to create a diversity of field here to be able to understand who does compliance. Do we see having COs allow you to be more compliant versus not? So this next year is going to be a learning phase. And I want to add this into that learning phase of how many people do we think we need to increase by and how much and where are we going to pull it from and all the normal conversations we have during budget time.
We need to move that from 12 to like 20, 25, because what is 12 based on what? Like just the occupancy?
12 is based on what we think that we can do in a year to be meaningful. We recognize there are a ton of complexes that need to go into it. But what we know is off the gate, there are 12 that are the most egregious violators across the city. And what we wanted to be able to do was, as you can fully recognize, the staffs of these teams, which are already overburdened, aren't growing just because this ordinance passes. We have to learn from this.
So then how, if you're doing 12, what's phase 2? What's the next round?
So finish year 1, learn from it, bring ordinance changes back that we think are going to be reasonable,
Based on that.
grow budgets that we think are going to be reasonable, and then we add then we open it up and have the conversation about how many can we do per year.
I still think the top 25 should still be known.
I don't disagree
To
with you.
give people, if I'm on that list and if I have a heads up, I'm next, let me get my house in order.
Okay.
Right? So while we work on our 12 occupancy, those who don't have occupancy, I think the fact that the city's eyes, we're on the top 25.
Yeah.
Then they can
We're working on top 12. The rest of the 13 are in the wing.
get ready.
Okay.
Right. And so people know, and I think also leaseholders know, property managers know that, okay, we need to close our ranks. By the time the city does visit us, we are at least able to say, on our own, good faith efforts, we've addressed this before y'all officially came to us. And so I think it sends the right type of chilling effect of we're taking this very seriously while waiting on the recommendations after the pilot to come back to say, this is how we do this long time.
Okay. I like that. Number 14, expansion of inspection staff was the same as AOF 13. Definitely don't disagree, right? We think generally they need bigger teams, but we need to wait a little bit. Number 15 is suggested funding mechanism, $50 per unit assessment of property owners. So we currently have a multifamily rental building inspection base charge of $135, and that covers anything that's 25 units or less. Anything above 25 units is $536 per unit, according to city code. I think the important thing here is if it is a recommendation of the legislative body to increase to 50, I think that's something we discussed, but the request is that we put it towards the end of the pilot. I'd like to understand how much cost we need to recover to be able to do it. As you know, we can't just be a profitable thing. We've got to be able to pay for it. So if we're having conversations about staff increase at the end, let's talk about fee increase as well. The rest are AOF 19 tenant rights. So we believe that the tenant rights section is addressed by the first 3, 1, 2, and 3. But we're going to be developing that. I think my request would probably be to get feedback from council offices based on the documents that we put together, the website that stood up, whether it reads well to y'all and understanding your constituents. And then the last 2 that I'll go over are 21 and 24. On 21, language accessible materials, absolutely support this. As you know, Herb and the Department of Neighborhoods has a really important language access program. We've actually tested out AI for the purposes of translation in this chamber. I believe it was during a BFA committee. They're going to be out tomorrow with a new QR code that will allow people to listen in their preferred language as live translation occurs. So we're working very, very hard on that type of stuff. This will be included, translation. And then 24, ownership change compliance reviews within 30 days. So section 10-175 establishes a period of 180 days for a new complex owner of the HRRB list to resolve all outstanding citations. So if you buy an apartment complex and it has outstanding habitability violations, you have to resolve them within 180 days. This is based on the determination of the experience of the City of Houston teams and the perspective of compliance. Councilmember Alcorn, you asked the question, right? Do the teams reserve the right to extend that 30-day window? Yes, we're shortening it from 60 to 30, but if someone is making a meaningful thing, do we give them 45 days to fix a roof instead of the 30? And I think that that's going to be the perspective here. If this body feels that there's 180 days is too short and you want to shorten it, I think that that's fine coming from this body, but the perspective of the folks doing the work is that 180 is a reasonable perspective to be able to get the compliance that they're looking for out of these apartment or property owners and managers.
Can we just clarify if there's a difference in terms of timeline for something that's structural versus, you know, like if this is a drainage issue or if this is about, you know, hot water, because they're all different.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And they're not, and there's supply chains. We even experienced that in public works, fixing our own water leaks in sidewalks, supply chain issue delays, right? So whatever the guidance is around the grace we're going to give for structural versus something that's health related, I think that will be helpful from council offices when we're communicating out expectations to tenants. That gives us the better language to say, hey, this is structural and here's the timeline. You have
Yep.
between here and here and here, there's a delay with the part, or they don't even make that elevator anymore and they have to go out to bid or something. We have to be able to do that because every issue is not the same.
And I'm going to
Yeah.
answer it in two different ways.
Sure.
The first one is that based within the citations that we issue, the violations that we do issue, there are timeframes built in based on life safety already. I do think it's important, though, that we communicate where those apartment complexes are in their compliance process, because this dies by lack of information, right? Everybody thinks nothing is happening when something might very well be happening, or vice versa. So what I'm hearing is that the preference is that we bake into whether it's, I don't know if maybe it's something that we put publicly, maybe not, but some sort of update document that can be communicated out to the public of they're still in compliance. We're still giving them a little time, but this is how much time we've given them. Okay. And that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
There were no questions, but Mayor Pro Tem is in the queue.
Just want to reiterate that Casey and Ben
Yes.
brought to my attention that some of the concerns they brought up weren't in the actual chart, and that we're going to work with them to get those.
Yeah, that's right.
get
And
that
there's
feedback
also the
into it.
Housers gave us some points as well. So what I'll do is I'll put together a document, also based on the public speakers that are here today, of what we've heard, if there's anything that's different than what is in this particular document. I actually just communicated with them very quickly about the owners and managers, and I think we need to
Yeah.
better understand that. So yeah, I'll have that to y'all by like tomorrow latest.
Perfect. And can you send it to the committee and then we can
Of
get
course.
it all out?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that'll be helpful because they had lots of good feedback.
I agree. This is
Yeah.
a really,
Yeah.
really good feedback.
Thank you much.
Thank y'all.
Yes, now we'll have public speakers.
Is Camelia Joseph here? Camelia Joseph? Hello, Ms. Joseph.
I'm Pastor Camelia Joseph with Kingdom Works Ministries and Congregational Land Development, Greater Houston. And I come before you today to really ask you to give some priority for rental housing. The communities that we serve, many of our people, because of their earning capacity, they're not able to purchase a home. And I know the city is doing a wonderful job of home buyer education and the $125,000 supplement that you're giving to people to buy homes. But unfortunately, many of the people we serve will probably never be able to buy a home because of their occupation. They're in the hospitality industry, working in the medical services or food service, and they still need a place to live. And so we're just asking that you would give some priority in that area. Looking at the Kinder Institute report, it says that the medium cost of housing went from $794 in 2010 to $1,362. And a person making $1,500 $15 an hour. That's about $2,600 a month. And that's more than 50% of where they're. So we're talking about severely housed. Another area we'd like to address to you is the faith-based community. In our community, we own a lot of land that's been just sitting there for years. And because churches bought land that was adjacent to their congregations, and they were thriving at the time, and they thought they would eventually need a bigger church or more parking. And so our job now is what we're doing is working with churches to help them put that land into commerce so that we can create affordable places for people that need it. And we'd like to encourage you to think of us as partners and figure out how you can include us in your budget and for consideration of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And our housing director is here, the director, Mike Nichols. But I want to invite, you're absolutely right. We had a housing committee last week where we talked about a couple of NOFAs going on the street to support multifamily housing. So we're excited about that. And then tomorrow I want to invite you to the spring community meeting where we are requesting this type of feedback related to our HUD annual action plan. So, the things around multifamily development, other type of direct services that funnels through that department. That's what we're doing tomorrow. So I want to invite you to the West Side at 6 o'clock, and we're having those similar conversations. But I think today's ordinance discussion is a reinforcement of the city's commitment of quality housing, and realizing that everyone may not be able to purchase a home at this time. But while they are in this city, they should have access to quality, safe, and affordable housing. So I think that's what we're working towards, and this ordinance aligns with that, our values. So thank you for being here.
Again, I want to congratulate you on the work that you're doing with these apartment complexes and trying to get them upscaled, or because there's so many, as you drive around the city, you see so many that are in such terrible shape, and people should not have to live like that. But they do have to, because that's what they can afford. Thank you.
Deborah Davies. Deborah Davies.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deborah Davis. I am the Center Manager for the Center of Excellence Housing Community Policy Research at Texas Southern University. I am speaking on behalf of the research done. First, we'd like to say thank you for the committee's continued work on the apartment inspection ordinance and the opportunity to comment. We'd like to dive into our team's analysis of the Houston's 311 system as it relates to the housing complaints. One finding deserves the committee's attention. 311 use is not equal across neighborhoods. Predominantly Hispanics track calls significantly less for infrastructure, utilities, and environmental health issues. Consistent with language barriers and distrust of government systems, Black communities call more for nuisance and environmental complaints, but less for infrastructure. This matters because we build our enforcement systems around complaint-driven 311 data. We are already starting to see an incomplete and inequitable picture where problems actually exist. We would like to propose 5 questions that we were able to extrapolate from the February 19th and March 5th meetings that occurred. The first question is 311 sufficient as your intake system? Other cities with effective rental programs often use these dedicated housing portals with persistent case tracking, which is open until resolved. Houston should examine this. The second question, what inspection model actually finds violation? Evidence consistently favors proactive and scheduled inspectors. How do we protect routine inspection capacities so compliant volumes don't crowd out? Third, will rental registrations fund itself and improve enforcement? Registration create an unknown inventory of units, but the structure matters, especially for piercing LLC ownership layers to reach actual accountable owners. 4.
Go ahead.
Thank you. 4. What enforcement tools change landlord behavior? Fine levels, problem property, databases, and receiverships. Programs are track records in order for us to look into this. And lastly, will stronger enforcement harm tenants? The research that we have done is adamant to us discovering these matters and putting some light towards these 5-pronged questions. So with the research that we have done, conducting research regularly takes resources. We are open to partnering with the council and committee and additional partners to resolve these matters to make sure the 311 is equitable.
So, Ms. Davis, thank you for your comments. We don't disagree.
Yes, ma'am.
Part of the entire process has always been about education. And 311, while it may not be a perfect system, it's the system that we currently have. And we have, all of the council members have always been on a quest to encourage people to call 311. We are definitely working on the language barriers so that we can communicate with the folks in our city. I think there's over 148 languages spoken in the city of Houston, and the Department of Neighborhoods has been very intentional about trying to do things in multiple languages. So you bring up a very valid point. I think the pilot will allow us to look at several of the questions that you pose. We've addressed a few of those, but I think if you could send that list to us electronically, we can definitely share that with the committee and see how we can work through. All of our committee meetings are open to the public, so we'd love to have your partnership. What organization are you representing again?
The Center of Excellence for Housing Community Policy Research at Texas Southern University.
Love it. Okay. Again, if you can send that to us electronically, we want to make sure that the work that you're doing aligns with the work that we're doing, and any feedback that we can give you for your work and any feedback that we may need. We want you to be a partner as well. Thank you for your engagement.
Thank you.
Ben McFall. Hey, Ben.
Hello. So I'm Ben McFall. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Houston Apartment Association. Came with a list of things to talk about, and y'all have dealt with many of them before I get up here.
Good.
So I'd like to first thank Mayor Pro Tem Cass Tatum and Councilman Tiffany Thomas for y'all's leadership on this, along with members of the administration. So thank you, Stephen. I think you said that y'all, we did submit some comments that were not in this original table of feedback, but it sounds like they've committed to providing an updated document that outlines some of our concerns and how they will be resolved, which is very helpful. I do want to also thank you for addressing the manager liability section. We think that is something that's very important. It sounds like we're working towards a resolution. So that was one that we did really want to see resolved. In section 10-159 of the current habitability, it only holds owners responsible, not managers. But in section 10-173, when we get into the high risk pool, it adds that designation for managers as well, which we think is not a good provision, because we want to make sure it's targeting and gets to the people that can actually remedy the problems. Another one we had in there was the transfer of ownership clause. We think that property sales often are kept confidential. The deals are often not disclosed or made public until after it's closed. And we think that the shared goal of ours is for underperforming properties to be under new ownership or management in hopes of improving the property, and that this section disincentivizes the transfer of ownership. One other that I'd ask that you take a look at, section 10-174, is related to how a property would remain on the high risk rental building list. It says that if they complete all the remedies, but if they get one violation within a 6-month period, they would be extended onto that list. So I'd like to ask that you guys take a look at maybe considering revising that one single property or one single violation, so that we don't have an unintended consequence of someone getting stuck on that list for an extended period of time just because they were to get one additional citation that may or may not be related to what got them on the list in the first place. And then one other kind of point of clarity we're asking for, we have heard a lot about a pilot program, which is focused on 12 properties, I believe is what's been stated. But then on the other hand, we have before us an ordinance that could potentially be imposed citywide and then impact a greater number of properties. So I guess the question is that 12 property threshold that we've been discussing, is that going to be put into the initial draft of the ordinance, or is it launched as a separate pilot program. I guess we're just kind of trying to understand or reconcile those two.
We'll let Stephen address.
Get out of your way.
So the intent is to, preference is not to put a pilot period in the ordinance, just because there is an opportunity, and we did talk about this a little bit. What I'd like to be able to see is 12 is what we believe the maximum that we can juggle at one time. That doesn't mean if 6 fall off within 3 weeks because they're going, oh, wow, I'm on this list now, do we add the next 6 into that list? And so we don't want to limit ourselves for the purposes of an ordinance. The idea is that the pilot would be an operational limitation on ourselves. Just trying to juggle what we can or can't do.
That answer your question?
That does.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the pilot allows for this recommendation to come back to the body, lessons learned, budgetary implications, personnel, training, all of those things. So pilot, because this is the first time they're deploying in this manner, to come back so we can improve the ordinance as we go along.
Got it. And if I may, could I address the question that came from Councilmember Huffman's office earlier about the member of the association? So I think the short answer would be we would welcome to have an HAA member as the representative as a property owner in the city of Houston. With the caveat being, we're not asking that it be a member, like a staff member of the association, more so one of our very active and engaged property owner members that has gone through the education and the qualifications of the association to be that member of the ASEC committee that is the property owner in the city, if that answers your question.
Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Our next speaker is Casey Morgan. You're good? All right. Julia Arduña. Hey, Julia.
Hi, good afternoon. We are in Julia Arduña, Texas Housers. For the record, I just wanted to continue showing my support and talking about the ordinance. I think it is something that's very important. I appreciate both of y'all's commitment and continued engagement on these issues. One of the things I did want to say through the presentations, the zip code map that was shown, as I looked at it, the big thing that I saw in my mind was this is where we also see high evictions happening. We do have an eviction snapshot from last year's evictions that I have sent with everybody before. I'm happy to send them again, but you can see kind of where those trends are. So if we're seeing poor conditions in an area, we're also seeing high evictions in an area. Sometimes these are because of property sales and then people are being evicted. But we're seeing some of these trends. And so to the idea of a habitability, a place to live where you as a landlord are expect to collect your rent, but tenants cannot expect to have a habitable place to live. So how are we ensuring that these things are working together and we're supporting our folks? Also just listening to the 311 calls, I remember reading something in an analysis of impediments from the city before the pandemic started. I believe it was 2019 that addressed that 311 calls were also slightly insufficient. And I do believe that people are more scared to talk about issues that are happening inside of their units. If they will be identified exactly, specifically in fear retaliation, they are less likely to call and say, I have a mold or pest issue inside the property, but they may be okay sending an anonymous tip and saying there might be something happening outside of the property. So continuing with that education part, I think is important, but also making people feel safe that these are systems that won't put them in harm's way as well if they're trying to advocate for themselves. Just wanted to raise those 2 points and also thank you all for this continued effort.
Thank you for your partnership, and we, will constantly seek your partnership and your assistance in helping us to make sure that we are providing as much tenant engagement and tenant education that we can.
Glad
as a
to be
city.
here.
Thank you. Laura Gallier.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Laura Gallier. I live in District C. Some of you may know I'm running for public office, and as part of that, I have canvassed thousands of people who live in the city, and the community universally supports the inspection of apartments. When I say universally, I mean homeowners, apartment dwellers, and the unhoused. Everybody sees a benefit to having apartment complexes that are kept in good repair. We don't want our neighbors living in unsafe conditions, and we don't want our neighborhoods brought down by apartments in unsafe conditions. And the unhoused people don't appreciate that that's the only place that they're likely to ever be able to afford to live. So this is the conclusion. I was surprised even when I canvassed property owners, landlords, that they support the inspection ordinance. 311, on the other hand, is almost universally disliked because cases that people are notified that cases are resolved when they can clearly and visibly see that they aren't. So I'm taking time out of my campaign to explain to them that that means it's been transferred to another department, but I really don't see why that couldn't be in part of the email that says your case is closed and it was transferred to this other department. But I'm getting off topic. These apartment inspection laws are laws that impact the safety of everyone, but particularly renters. And the community doesn't accept the idea that the city isn't enforcing these laws. Inspection codes are laws, okay? They don't accept that home can't be a respite for many when we are spending our tax dollars enforcing expired registration stickers on cars. That does not improve the safety of anybody. If we feel like the issue is that we don't have enough money, which seems to have come up several times today, I have ideas. I just mentioned one. Stop enforcing expired registration stickers. That would free up a lot of money. Then you could freeze the HPD budget and use that money that was going to be allocated to them to inspect apartments. Thank you.
We appreciate you being here today. Are there any other members of the public in the chamber who would wish to comment? Any other members?
Hold your peace.
Going once, going twice? Council members, any other council member, staff? State your name for the record.
Hi, Marion Wright. I just really want to thank y'all for doing the public engagement and for listening for all the meetings and everything. And this is how it's supposed to happen. And it's really a pleasure to see what y'all have done. So thank y'all so much for listening to everybody because it's not always done. So we do appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. We appreciate it.
It's not easy.
Again, thank you to all of the staff and the organizations that have participated. Thank you to the council members who've also helped. Want to give a, Councilmember Ramirez, I can't believe you didn't have one question today.
We doing
Uh,
good, y'all.
I do want to, again, give a special shout out to the District F team and the District K team for all of your hard work and corralling all this feedback and making sure everyone had the information that they needed for our meetings. Councilmember Thomas, kudos to you and your team. Kudos to the District K team. We look forward to getting this on the agenda probably within the next 30 days. Stephen, thank you, and Josh for the work that y'all did with the feedback we all collected. Before we adjourn, I'd like to let everyone know the next scheduled Economic Development Committee meeting is March the 18th. No, can't be March the 18th. April the 18th, 2026. Councilmember Thomas, you want to make an
The
announcement?
vice chair gonna tell us when the next meeting is.
Vice Chair, do you know when the next Housing Committee meeting is? They are having one in April, so just stay tuned.
We do have one.
For the next Housing and Affordability Committee meeting. And if you are interested in receiving any information from Economic Development or Housing, just reach out to our District K or District F offices. And the time is now 3:19 p.m. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your participation.